Hi, I'm Miranda Londe, and I just wanted to talk about this last project and how it taught me about interpersonal communication. It really required me to get to know more about personal definitions of terms, more so than the other things we've studied, just because having to present it to a class as if you know the material means you actually have to know the material. So that was a really unique way of learning the material, was to learn it as if I had to teach it to somebody else, and I think that was really beneficial. As far as working in a group goes, I think it's really important. What I've learned from this is that it's super important to know what's going on with the other group members, just in their personal lives, not like nitty gritty details, but just knowing everyone's general schedule, what their workload with school looks like, and stuff like that. Because especially if each person is responsible for turning in a big part of the project, it's crucial to know what kind of workload they're actually able to take on at the moment. So I definitely learned a lot about that. It was difficult with the first project to kind of break the silence of the Zoom call and really get any information out of anyone, but I think we all learned after the first project that we work better together if we know a little bit more about each other. So this last project, we started each Zoom call off by just shooting the breeze, talking about our lives, and it kind of helped us get a feel for where each person was coming from, and helped us shift the balance of things. If someone seemed a little more busy with life and with school than somebody else, we maybe took a couple things off of their plate and put it on someone's plate who was only school focused and didn't have to worry about too many extra things. So that's something, I think the biggest lesson I learned, just being on Zoom this year versus all the other semesters with a communications class, is that communication definitely looks different over video calls and everything, and it's actually a little more difficult to kind of break that ice over Zoom calls, because you have that freedom to kind of shut off your camera and pretend like you're not really there. Overall, this last project I feel we worked a lot better as a team, and set earlier deadlines, and just had more fun with this project than the last one, and I attribute that to us getting to know each other better. This class taught me a lot more than I expected to learn, because a lot of communications class seemed like common knowledge, but especially looking into personal definitions in interpersonal relationships brought a whole new light to different things in my own, that I can take into my own daily life with my relationships with my friends, my family, and all that stuff, even with strangers. So yeah, overall it's been a good semester, and I think we finished strong with this last project. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Sandip. So, on the topic of interpersonal relationship with family, I would like to say that in order to have a good interpersonal relationship, I think you need to have a positive interpersonal relationship with oneself. And great interpersonal or great self esteem tends to be higher among people with a positive family background. And what I mean by positive family background, which I'll get in a few seconds. First of all, let me talk about this one study. According to a study used for child development supplement of the panel of income dynamics to examine family structures, associations with adolescent physical health, behavior, and emotional well-being suggest that adolescents living with their two biological parents' families have better outcome than living with other family types. It is likely that adolescents who were raised in two biological parents have higher self-esteem and better interpersonal relationship with others. On second note, traditional families tend to have higher level of conformity orientation, where children are expected to follow the family hierarchy, where rules and regulation are there, whereas single parent families tend to have a lower conformity orientation as well as a lower level of communication. For example, it is due to the fact that constraint on time and effort that single mothers can invest in parenting are likely to be more stringent than those faced by two parents. Even if the single parents gets married with someone new, which is called the social parents or stepdad, have fewer incentives to invest and take care of children than biological parents do, and also have less parental authority in children's care. So those type of parents have incomplete knowledge of how their kids feel, both emotionally and physically, unless the kids open up and communicate their feelings directly, which is unlikely. And lastly, I would like to say that teenagers in single mother families, and even in those that have both a biological mother and their new social stepfather, report more antisocial behavior than in normal family. So therefore, traditionally raised teenagers may have different views in the word family than those in single parent families. Thank you for listening.
Thank you, Sandip. For the master lesson plan, my contribution to the group was creating a Google Docs to share ideas, tips, and a brief description of the group meetings. Then I created a detailed outline for the video presentation. The group members agreed on the layout, and there's really no other discrepancies or debates on that. From there, we brainstormed ideas of icebreakers, activities, and ways to engage audiences. The game telephone was mentioned, so we built off that to create an icebreaker relevant to our topic of personal definitions of love created through family and romantic relationships, and how languages and symbols vary. From there, we selected our individual topics. I chose to analyze how gender differences within romantic relationships and how these differences affect our interpersonal communication with loved ones. I found 2 scholarly articles to support my idea. First, Coping with Remembrances of Parental Rejection, Gender Differences by Kai et al. Studied coping mechanisms across genders. This was relevant to understand how people cope with rejection or an absence of interpersonal relationships at a young age. Secondly, the symbolic nature of trust in heterosexual adolescent romantic relationships by Miranda et al. Researches how self-esteem and past relationships can influence how individuals process conflict within interpersonal relationships. These articles were helpful in supporting the overall group goal of how family, love, and languages can influence personal definitions within interpersonal relationships. Lastly, the group planning process, I think every member can agree, could have been better for all 3 projects. I understand people are busy, but there's little room to edit, suggest ideas, and make comments when individual work is submitted on the day of the project due date. Past projects have been submitted last minute, and as a result, our grade reflected the quality of work we submitted. These group projects were nerve-wracking considering we all received the same grade. This is why I set boundaries advised by the professor to make sure whoever responsible for the video or any other edits could have enough time. Luckily we did, because some group members had to re-record their portion for this group project. At the end of the day, I did my best to reach out by sending emails, creating docs, and attending meetings. I can only hope the group members appreciate the work I put into this group. Thank you, and next is Longji.
Hello, my name is Longjel, and my portion of the project is on the importance of language and symbols to interpersonal communication. I kind of concluded that I wanted to do this topic for my portion after kind of scrolling through the textbook, and it felt the most interesting to me. The source for much of what I was reading came, 1, from the textbook, and 2, in the form of the book How Language Works by David Crystal. So to sum up my portion, I kind of explained basics of the history of language, how much it has evolved in such a short time, in addition to how much it can differ among cultures and time periods. A big theme in my portion of the project is conveying how understanding the meaning with which we give language makes communication with people as we do now, how it makes it possible. And I also go over how language utilizes symbols to do this. The biggest takeaway that I got after researching is that relationships are complex, and a lack of a decent understanding of these complex things can lead to confusion, frustration, or humor in some cases due to the sheer number of possible interpretations of language and meaning across many cultures and eras. New words and phrases are also constantly being added, so this kind of further complicates that potential problem that can arise. And this fits well into the lesson plan. After the rest of my group is done discussing their portions, which have to do with specific kinds of interpersonal relationships, I'll have my thing. I'll have an icebreaker and a game that will do well to refocus the audience. The best one for me was a symbolism type of game, such as Pictionary, in which I draw an image and have the audience guess what the image could represent. It's a pretty good way to visually get across the point that meanings and definitions of things can vary between people and cultures. And this flowed pretty well with the other definitions and topics that our group covered as a whole. So putting the project together was simple for our group. We were able to work on our own portions that interested us. We met up on Zoom multiple times to form a level of cohesion with our topics so everything would make sense. But aside from that, we kind of let each other do our own individual portions solo so that we could become experts at our own individual sections of the presentation. The things that we emphasized in our meetings were good transitions, covering the most important aspects of each topic, citing our sources, a good number of icebreakers, games, pop quizzes, and other things to keep people engaged as we continue throughout this presentation.
Hi, my name is Ruby, and I created this section in the lesson plan, educating people on the definitions in interpersonal communication. For our lesson plan, we began by creating a format Nicole suggested that we use the 3 E's: educate, entertain, and engage. As a group, we began by brainstorming ways to begin the lesson plan by entertaining or engaging the audience. Some ideas we came up with was the telephone game and an icebreaker. I applied the concept of the 3 E's to my section of the lesson plan. I began by creating a prompt asking the student to engage in a free write and reflect on their personal communication with others. Then my lesson plan dives into the educational aspect following the free write. And in the educational aspect, I provide definitions along with examples. I chose to include examples with my definitions of concepts to create a better understanding for the audience. And I finished my lesson plan with a pop quiz using flashcards. Since the definitions were a lot, I think that using flashcards as a pop quiz seemed like a good fit. The final activity was perfect for checking, understanding, and actively engaging the presenter with the students. This is what the flashcards look like. They're pretty big, and it includes like the word, and in the back it has the definitions for each one. So the concept behind it was that I would say what's the definition for self-disclosure, and they would say the definition, would turn it around, we would go over it. Obviously for interpersonal communication, the definitions on the back. I also provided the examples in here. So for example, you disclose to your partner about how safe they make you feel. This is an example of, it says the answer in the back. So that was a fun activity, and the only thing that was difficult for the project was, I guess, our conflicting schedules. As it's close to finals, a lot of us were on time constraints, and we also, have jobs, and it was definitely a little bit hard towards the end of the closer we got to the project to be able to meet up. But as a group, I think we were able to be very accommodating to one another we constantly checked in on each other, and we also had open conversations through our Canvas messages. We had already set it up since like the first group project, where it would be where one message would go to every member in the group. That way everybody knew what was going on. If we had any changes or any suggestions and someone sent a message to one person, it would just automatically go to the whole group. Something that we could have done better as a group was set a more defined goal of what we wanted our assignment to look like. But overall, I think our group did a really good job and everything.